Good evening, everyone. It is Friday, November 7th, 2025, and this is a special edition of Douglas Now Live. And what I want to do here is give you a little bit of an election update. And if you're wondering what kind of election update we might be having on Friday when the election was on Tuesday, the election has been certified. Now, that's not typically a big deal. Elections are always certified on Friday. But we don't normally have an election that has been decided by one vote or a margin that slim. And there have been a lot of questions and a lot of people wanting to know exactly what is going to happen next. So what I want to do is go over the certification process and let you know what is on the horizon, because it's not over. The election has been certified. And it's been certified using the numbers that came in on Tuesday. But next week, don't know what day yet, but next week there will be a hand audit done. All right, not a recount. And there's a difference between a recount and an audit, although they accomplish the same purposes. All right, the audit is basically a recount. They're going to go back through by hand with a number of people in the office, in the elections office, and they're going to go through and look at the ballots and do all their checks and balances that they do, and it will include counting the votes once again. All right, so it's not over yet. Now, the reason why they called it an audit and not a recount is because if it was a recount, they would not be able to certify the election. So an audit does not hold up the certification process, but a recount does. So the election board wanted to go ahead and get the election certified. And there's some things you have to do in order to get the election certified. There's a reason why you want to go ahead and do it in a timely manner. All right. But again, if there's anything found during the audit, it can certainly affect the outcome. And we will see what happens with that. They were saying tonight at the meeting, or this afternoon, there was a meeting at 4:30. They were saying they don't anticipate any changes coming forth out of the audit. Now, one interesting fact here is an audit is not required, neither is a recount. A lot of people have asked, and there is some language regarding elections that if the margin of victory is within a certain percentage, then an automatic recount actually kicks in. The Nichols mayor's election, which is the one people are asking about, did not meet those criteria. So there's no obligation on behalf of the elections board or the elections office to conduct a recount. All right. But, and for the sake of our discussion here, consider a recount and an audit basically the same thing. They're not the legal definition and some of the steps that you go through, but they accomplish the same purpose. Okay. So for all intents and purposes, recount, audit, whatever, if there's any kind of funny business found, if there's any mistakes on the machines, if there are any votes that weren't counted that should have been, or were counted and shouldn't have been, all that will get sorted out in the audit process, just like it would in a recount process. So again, for the sake of our discussion, basically the same thing. However, they were able to go ahead and certify the election, and that's what they wanted to do. Now, when the audit will take place, there's some guidelines you've got to follow with notifying candidates and letting other folks know that it's taking place. You have to give them enough notice to respond and to be there if they would like to. All right, so it's not going to happen tomorrow or Sunday or even Monday. The date they were talking about, and I don't know that they ever decided on exactly what day they were going to conduct this audit, was Tuesday. Now, Tuesday's Veterans Day, and normally the elections office would be closed. But Christy said that she would, our election superintendent, said that she would be glad to come up there and take care of it on Tuesday. Right, so you do have a holiday in the mix there with Veterans Day. So, but you also want to do it quickly. You want to do it as quickly as you can, so that you get this matter taken care of and get it put to rest. There's also a lot of post-election paperwork that the election office has to do. And they really can't get started on that and get the entire election taken care of and put in the books until they get this done. So what I've got here, I've got the election summary report from, and I don't know how well you can see it, but the election summary report from Tuesday night. So these are the unofficial results. All right. And I'm going to read the important ones off. So if you can't see them very well, I will read them to you. But these are the numbers that the election office used to certify today. Okay. So again, you've got in the Public Service Commission District 2, Tim Eccles, the incumbent Republican, won in Coffee County, 1579 over Alicia M. Johnson, a Democratic challenger, 1,362. In PSC District 3, the incumbent Republican Fitz Johnson won 1,616 votes to Peter Hubbard's, the Democratic challenger, 1,319 votes. Now, if you followed that race, you know that what happened statewide was the exact opposite. All right. The Democrats flipped those two seats and won statewide. So Miss Johnson won her race and Mr. Hubbard won his. But locally, it was not that way. The Republicans carried the ballot. On our second page, again, these numbers, not a whole lot here to discuss. Nothing big there with the Nichols, with the Ambrose mayor and with the Ambrose City Council. Douglas City Commission, here are those numbers again. Edwin Taylor, the incumbent. This is Ward 1, Douglas City Commission. Edwin Taylor, 156 to Sheila Carter Bivens, 129. Nichols City Council, again, you've got 11 or so candidates on here, and the top 5 vote getters are the council members, and they were Derek Bonaparte, Gloria Davis, Philip Grady, Beverly Holton, and Glenn Tanner. I believe 3 of those are incumbents. All right. And I didn't read those in the numerical order of the number of votes that they got. Now, Derek did get the most with 163, but they did this list alphabetically, and he was at the top. So I just read the winners, but not necessarily in the order of the vote. You can see here how many votes they got. And, of course, the referendum for countywide package sales, alcohol sales on Sunday, yes, 1,732 to no, 1,254. County sales by the drink, yes, 1,713 to no, 1,295. And, of course, this is the election here primarily that people are concerned about. When I say that, now, the election office did get a lot of questions from other candidates, and they want to make sure that everything was done correctly and all the votes were counted correctly, because if there were mistakes made possibly in the Nichols mayor's election, then it could be that there were mistakes made in their race as well. Now, and this is an important distinction to make, and people need to realize this and understand this. Because there's a 1 vote difference does not mean that a mistake was made. What it says is a lot about how divided the city of Nichols is right now. All right. Because, there may be a winner in this election, but there has not been a clear-cut winner. All right. And however this thing turns out once the audit is done, whoever the mayor is has an uphill battle, because pretty much half the people in your town don't want you in that office. So a lot of people will look at this and say, well, because there's 1 vote difference, that means something funny happened. That is not at all the case. All right. When you're dealing with numbers, you're dealing with math, you're dealing with this kind of stuff, funny things happen, right? Funny things happen. Numbers are an interesting thing. And we've actually seen an election here in Coffee County tie. It's happened in other places as well. And you're more likely to see something like that happen in a small race, okay? And in Nichols, again, you've got 505 registered voters, all right? And you've got 320 votes were cast here in this race. So when you're dealing with a small district, a small community, any small jurisdiction where people are voting, you can see some weird things happen. So the fact that there's a 1 vote difference and it's 159 to the incumbent Taman Frost to 158 Ronnie Birch, that again, that doesn't mean that there's necessarily anything wrong. All right. What it means is if you're dealing with a small community or a small district, you need to go vote. 185 people who were registered decided to stay home and not vote on Tuesday. And those 185 people could have made a significant difference in this election. 5 people could have made a difference. Whoever looked at their watch at 6:50 and said the polls close at 7 and I don't feel like going and voting and rushing down there, my vote doesn't count. Your vote does count. Your vote would have counted significantly, and I know there were people who did that. Maybe somebody had to be at work at 8 and said, I don't feel like getting up at 6:30 to make sure I can get to the polls and vote. I'm just going to get up at 7:30 like I usually do and be at work at 8. I don't feel like going to vote. My vote doesn't count. Yes, your vote does count. It counts. It counts in every single election. All right. Now, you may also see here at the bottom where my finger is, unresolved write-ins 1. You might be thinking, what exactly does that mean? Well, it means that someone wrote in a candidate in the write-in spot. There is a spot for write-ins, but it doesn't matter who you write in. It doesn't count. All right. If in fact someone had put in this unresolved, had typed in on the machine either Mayor Frost's name or Ronnie Birch's name, it still wouldn't count because that's not how you vote for that candidate. You vote for a candidate on the ballot, an official candidate, by clicking the box by that candidate's name. All right. Again, there's a spot for write-ins, but those don't count. If you want to be a write-in candidate, there's a process that you have to go through in order to be a qualified, certified, if you will, write-in. All right. So let's say, that the 185 people who decided not to vote, if all 185 of them voted and wrote in, pick somebody's name, John Smith, and John Smith had 185 votes and the other 2 candidates had the votes, John Smith would not win that election. All right, because he's not a certified write-in candidate, and a lot of people don't understand that. So this unresolved write-in, whoever's name was written in, would not affect the election. If it was for, just say it was for Ronnie Birch, it would not tie the election. If it was for Mayor Frost, it would not put him ahead by 2. All right, and if it was for Mickey Mouse, and Mickey Mouse gets votes in every election that we have, he really does. They used to print out a ticker where you could see all those crazy write-in votes. And there's some interesting names that get put in there. All right. So the election has been certified. But again, these are the numbers that we wrote in our story on Tuesday, the numbers that we've talked about here, the numbers that we've looked at here tonight. Those are the numbers which have been sent to the Secretary of State's office. Those are the numbers that they have used, they being the elections office, have used to certify the election. Now, again, that does not necessarily mean that something might not change next week. And once they schedule that audit, we will let you know. But as of this afternoon, I have not heard that they have done that. Again, there's some legal considerations to take into place or to take into account with notifying candidates and notifying the people who need to be there for that. So just to review, it's not a recount, it's an audit. And the reason it's a hand audit, and the reason it's a hand audit is because it does not affect the certification process, which the county did this afternoon. So those are the updates. Again, a lot of people are interested in this, particularly from the standpoint of the Nichols mayor's election. We'll see what happens when the audit is done. They were saying at the elections board tonight, the election board meeting, that they do not anticipate finding any problems with machines, anything like that. All right. And there's some other indicators that they look at with how the votes are tallied, with the number of votes cast versus the number of cards cast. And, there's some things that will let you know as you go through the machines and as you count the votes and count the cards, if something unusual has taken place, and they do not anticipate that. So that is our update here on this Friday evening. No football games tonight. I heard somebody talking about it at the elections office, wanting to know if there were any games tonight. There are not. The CCA Patriots were eliminated from the playoffs last week. The Coffee Trojans have made the playoffs, but will not be playing until next week. No one in the GHSA is playing tonight. They're all getting a week off, and then the first round of the state playoffs will begin next week. Next Friday night, the Coffee Trojans will travel to Canton to play the Sequoia Chiefs. So, of course, we will have coverage of that game next week, but no football tonight. Cross-country teams were in Carrollton today competing in the state meet. We will have some results for them when those are compiled and when we receive them. But that's really the only sports that we had. Last night, CCA Lady Patriots played 2 games. Their season was about a week long. They played 2 games last week. They played 2 games on Tuesday night of this week, and then played 2 games last night. They finished 4-2, and the playoff bracket will be released soon. And there is a chance that the CCA Lady Patriots, in their first year of competition, could make the playoffs. That would also be a first for Coffee County. And we've had 3 football teams, at least the first in a very, very long time, that we've made. That we've had 3 football teams make the postseason. You might could go back to the 50s and find. I don't remember how many high school teams we had in the 50s, but I know we had a college program. It's quite possible that we could have had way back then. We could have had multiple teams depending on how many there were in the county. That was much more before my time. But in my lifetime, we've never had 3 football teams make the postseason. That could happen this year. That would be neat if it did. We always take a look at our tower cam. This time last week, it would not be as dark as it is, but we are, again, looking back to the east. No real reason to show the tower cam. I just like to do it since it's there. We hung that thing several years ago, and we need to use it. Beautiful night tonight. Been a mild day today, but the weather could possibly deteriorate tomorrow, so we might have some intermittent showers throughout the day tomorrow, and could make for kind of a nasty weekend. So time change last week, that always complicates things. And then a little bit of rain possibly in the forecast tomorrow. So I hope that doesn't spoil anyone's weekend plans. Thank you again for streaming with us. As always, if there's any breaking news, we will let you know. And of course, we will follow the audit with the election. Once we have a date for it, we will announce that, and then we will follow the results and see if anything does in fact change. This is a little bit of an unusual set of circumstances. We don't typically have elections this close that result in these types of measures following in the aftermath of the election. So it'll be kind of fun to follow it all the way around and see what happens. Once we have some news on this, we will let you know. Y'all have a wonderful weekend. We'll see you next time.